Hey everybody, Lars here. Time for your third video for Unit 1. I thought I would jump on real quick. If you recognize this shirt from video 2, it's because I finished some of my work early. It's now 10:30 at night, but I figured I'd jump on and shoot this video real quick so I have it in a can and I have it to give to you later in the week. Plus, it's going to be a short one. I'm just going to jump on, throw out a programming idea, and then we're going to quick code it up, and it's going to use some of the different features that we've been looking at, floor division, if then, things like that. So let's get started. I'm going to fire up idle 3.4, and I'm going to say file, new file, and this is going to be my new file right here. And I always start with some comments because it's a good habit to get into. Let's see, this is a comment, and then I will just say author, spell it correctly this time, Lars. And then down here I will say the penny program. Okay, and the reason I'm calling it the penny program is what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the user to input an amount of pennies, and then I'm going to turn around and tell you how many quarters, dimes, and nickels there are, and then how many pennies are left over at the end. Alright? Kind of simple, but we're just starting. I mean, literally, this is the first week of class, so let's start with the simple thing. First thing I want to do is I want to ask the user, well, actually, the first thing we're going to do is not use capitals when we type print, and then I'm going to type just a little something to make the program look decent, and then I will print the and then if you're using a Windows system, Control copy, Control paste, and you're there. Might as well save it for the first time and name it now. I will go to my directory on my hard drive where I keep stuff for our class. I'll go to Unit 1, and I'll call this penny.py. Actually, when I do this, I don't need to put the .py. So now I got the penny program. Save it and run it, and alright, I got the penny program. Now, what's the first thing I want to do when I do my penny program? I think the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to ask the user for input. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to teach a new trick. See this last line right here? We're going to give a \n at the end of it. You know what that's going to do? That's going to print a blank line. Watch when we do this. Now we have an extra blank line in there. \n is what's called a special character. And if you give a \n in a string, it will print a blank line where you put the \n. There are other special characters. \t will give you a tab and a whole host of others, but we're not going to worry about that right now. Let's ask the user how many pennies we want. Now, I don't want to deal with an integer, so I'm just going to put it in there right away. And I'm going to say input, how many pennies do you have? Question mark. And then a colon. To make it look decent, I'll throw a space in. And I have to do 2 parens because I want to make sure that I am balanced and I close both of them. And then I'm going to do that. And right now, I'm just going to print pennies. Back in the day, when I learned how to program back in the 80s, memory and compile time was precious. So they would teach us how to plan our programs and then write our programs out and double check them and make sure everything was okay. I really don't have to do that anymore. We're lousy with memory. The compile time is right there on your laptop, so it's not like you're wasting compile time on a mainframe or anything like that. So usually we will slowly but surely, as the program goes, do little unit tests and make sure, I'll just say 234 pennies, and I printed 234. Alright, so I'm in good shape so far. Let me lose that print pennies. Now, what do I want to do? Well, first thing I want to do is be a good programmer and give you guys some good habits. So I am going to leave some comments. Ask the user for the penny amount. And then I do that. Alright, so I have a comment. So what's the next thing I'm going to do? I am going to determine the number of quarters and print them. Alright, so I've got a bunch of pennies. Alright, 234 or whatever number the user puts in. How am I going to determine how many quarters are in that bunch? Well, not exactly brain surgery. I'm going to create a new variable. I'm going to call it quarters. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the variable pennies and I'm going to integer divide it by 25. Okay? So if I print pennies and then quarters, let me check that out. How many pennies do you have? I'll put in 234 again. 234 should give me 9, yes? And it does. It gives me 9 quarters. All right, so that's a pretty good deal. So if I wanted to, I could end the program and say with this amount pennies we have, and then print that. And then say quarters. Run this. How many pennies do you have? 234. With 234 pennies, we have 9 quarters. Not too shabby crabby. All right, that's a decent little output. And at the end of the day, that would work, and that would be the end of the program. But I think we're going to do a little bit more than that. Let's say I want to go move forward and determine how many dimes there are. I'm just going to get rid of all of these prints, and I'm going to say quarters, quarters. So it tells me how many quarters I have. Okay. Now let's say we want to. How about we cut and paste? Copy. Never mind those explosions back there. I have another movie on. Determine the amount of, and we'll just come here and change this to dimes. All right. What's our problem? Our problem is while we've determined the amount of quarters, we didn't really alter the penny number to tell it, hey, we took away the quarters, just leave what's behind now. So let's do this up here in our quarter section. We can put in a comment. I guess, you know what? I will put in a comment. I'll say just pennies. And then we'll say pennies equals, and then pennies minus, and what do we want to minus? We want to minus the amount of quarters, but we don't want to minus the amount of quarters. We want to minus the amount of quarters in pennies. So to be honest, we can just real simply use our quarter variable and just say times 25. All right, that should work. All right, and then if we print pennies now, we'll get the amount of pennies left. Okay, let's see. How many pennies do I have? I'll keep using 234 because we know it. And they're both 9, but that's absolutely correct. 9 quarters is 225. Add 9 to it is 234. That's the original amount. So I think we're in good shape on that. So I'm coming here to determine my dimes, and I have the right penny amount. You know, we're going to have to start using another example because there is no dime left. But I think what I'm going to do is save a little time. Watch me work. I'm going to copy. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to paste. So I have the same quarter logic, but all I have to do is change quarters to dimes, and you could probably do a find and replace. And I'm just going to go to each one to make sure I'm a good guy. I do not want to use 25 anymore. I'm doing dimes, so I want to use 10. Okay? And then I do dimes. And I change it here, too. I should have done find and replace. Dimes. All right, and then adjust the pennies. Pennies equals, but now I want it to do dimes times 10. All right, and that is going to print my amount of dimes. So let's run it and see what we get. Right, the penny program. How many pennies programs do you have? I will say 241, so that we can get a dime going on. Dun, 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 dun. What did I do wrong? Dimes equals dimes. Yeah, you think? Change pennies selected dimes. I didn't want to do that. Because I evaluated from right to left, there was no variable called dimes at that time. So Python threw an error. It said dimes is not defined. What are you doing? Because I had it over here on the right side of the equation, all right? But I think I'm good now. I'm going to say 241, and it's going to tell me 9 quarters and 1 dime. All right, so we're in pretty good shape. The only thing we're really not doing at the end is print the remaining pennies, and then just print pennies, comma, pennies. There we go. Right. So now when we do our 241, we'll account for that last 6 cents. And there we go. All right. My OCD demands that I lose that space, so we are normal. All right, so now we've got a program that does quarters, dimes, pennies. Of course, we're going to be complete. And I'm going to highlight the entire dime section, and we're going to go down, and we are going to quarters, dimes, what's next? Nickels. Is this the way you spell nickels when it's money? I'm guessing it is. All right, and I'm going to say, just I'll call it Nick. Keep things nice and short. And that's pennies divided by 5. So then I'm going to print Nick. Here I think I'm going to spell it out. Nickels. And then I'm going to adjust my pennies, and I'm going to say Nick times 5. And there's other ways to do this. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. All right. So what do we have? The 241. That will work. So now when I say 241, I'm in pretty good shape there with 241 pennies. I have 9 quarters, 1 dimes, 1 nickel, and 1 penny. And that's pretty much the most efficient breakdown of that dollar amount. But there's still one last thing I think I'm going to do with this program. Let's say I go back and I do my 234. Okay? I get 9 quarters, 0 dimes, 1 nickels, 4 pennies. That 0 dimes kind of sticks out. If you want to be complete about things, maybe we should have something that doesn't print the amount if it's 0. Because why do we care? There are none. It should just say 9 quarters, 1 nickels, 4 pennies. Well, I know about the plurals too. When you only have 1, it should be nickel, but we can do that at a later time. What I think I want to do right now is create a situation where if there is nothing of that money amount, then I'm not going to print it. So how would I do that? I think I'm going to alter my print statement so that it's contingent on the money being not 0. So I can do that because I'm a man with an if statement. So basically what I'm going to say is if quarters is not equal to 0, then print. Okay? That way if it is 0, it'll just skip the print. Okay? If it is 0, then quarters is 0 and nothing will happen with pennies. So pennies will just jump down. So we'll try it later. We'll give it a 24 and we'll see what happens, okay? So I'm going to be complete, dude. And I am going to do it for everybody. Spell that right. If dimes not equal to 0, then print dimes. Okay? If Nick is not equal to 0, then print Nick. And then always, I guess we'll always print the remaining pennies. Nah, we don't have to. Why not be complete? If pennies not equal to 0, print the pennies. Okay, you know what? I think we have it. Let's run it and find out. Let's use a couple different examples. All right, first thing I'm going to do is do 24. So I have 2 dimes and 4 pennies. That worked well. Because look, no quarters, because there are none, and no nickels. Just 2 dimes and 4 pennies. And that's the way we break that down. Okay, let's go run it again. You notice I have to go back and run the program again every time we want to do it. And about a month's time, we're not going to have to do that anymore. Because we're going to find a way to have the program keep running and ask us if it wants to keep going. But that's for another time. I'm just going to keep doing this and run it again. Now, what was the one that didn't have a dime? Was it 241? 234. Well, let's do 234. That should have what? 9 quarters, a nickel, and 4 pennies, and that's what we got. Okay, so that's a pretty good shape, in pretty good shape right there. What was the other one we did? 241. 241's got one of everything, so that's a good example to run if you want to see everything. I think we're in pretty good shape here. Now, if we want, we can do something psycho. And look, just that fast. Boom. A lot of quarters. I could have done dollars. Nah, I figured I'd start with quarters. What's the big deal? All right? So, at the end of the day, this is our program. All right? Look at that. And we did it pretty quick, too. I don't know how much time. Hold on a minute. 16 minutes. Okay? So that's not too shabby. In 16 minutes, we crafted this program. We put up a little banner so we could see this is our penny program. We asked the user how many pennies they have. And then slowly but surely, we go down the line and figure out the different denominations and how many are there. Okay? We use the if statement to see if quarters has any value. And if it does, then we print it. If it doesn't, we skip the print so that things look good. The way we're doing over here. If there's no dimes, we don't print any dimes, okay? And we went down and we did quarters, dimes, nickels, and then at the end we picked up our remaining pennies. Only if they existed. Because as you can probably guess, if I give it something that doesn't have any pennies, we're just going to get 8 quarters. And it won't bother with the pennies at the end because we fix things up. Okay? So that's a penny program. Piece of cake, right? I will put penny.py up in your Unit 1 resources. So you will have this to play around with it. Uses integer division. Finally, some well-named variables and not num1 and var1 and stuff like that. You should name your variable something useful that's going to tell you something as you read the program. And Python readability is very important. Okay, so we use the input here. We use casting. We use floor division. We use the if statement. We're doing some good stuff here. But the most important thing is that we're sitting down with a blank slate, we're thinking up some logic in our head, and we're coding it. We're codifying the logic and the problem solving that's in our head. We're putting it down in a program, and now I got that penny problem licked. Anytime I got a pile of pennies, I can go to this program, and I can figure out what my change should be. All right? All right, I'm getting out of here. You guys have a good night, and I will talk to you later. Bye.